we will talk about the mobility in Amersfoort. We also went to a council meeting, and in the council meeting, one of the problems that was addressed was one of the council members that was talking about going to a restaurant within the city, and he was really trying to go with public transport, but it was in the evening, so there weren't a lot of options. So he ended up choosing for the car, even though he really wanted to go use public transport because it's better for the environment and all that. But yeah, in the end, there weren't enough options. So that really illustrates the problem that Amersfoort has with mobility. And our research question is, how can the municipality of Amersfoort facilitate a modal shift towards active and sustainable modes of transportation within the municipality of Amersfoort? Well, our planning challenge is about the modal shift, so shift from car-dependent mobility to a more active and sustainable mobility. The city of Amersfoort is currently quite car-dependent, which leads to increased amount of congestion, air pollution, accidents, noise, and other problems. They also occupy valuable urban space, which is really needed because of densification, other purposes, and green space, and meeting spaces, and public space. And some policy challenges that have to do with this are the deteriorating health conditions due to pollution, and also social inequalities for paying for public transport, and all dependents are also associated with this.
As Rod said, modal shift, what is it? It's a transition from private transport usage to a more mobility-based sustainable modes, such as walking, cycling, or public transport usage. Why is it so difficult to go from this to that? Because it is really deeply embedded in our daily routines. Think for yourself, what would you rather choose, walking out of your door and going into a car with a warm seat or playing any blasting music, or would you rather walk 5 minutes to a public transport and sit next to a crazy guy? So it is really convenient to use a car, which is really difficult to change. And I personally think that it is cooler to be a car driver rather than using public transport, and that is really deeply embedded in our society and how we think about cars. So what are the key factors for this success? How are they going to make a change in this? Push factors, so we're going to obviously a lot of you know what push and pull is. We're going to push these policies such as making parking lots more expensive or driving a car more expensive in general. And we're going to pull people into using public transport as, for example, making the distance, the travel time shorter, or the distance walking to a public transport shorter. So the main outcome or the goal is, in these small neighborhoods, what we are studying is that usage of a car should be a choice, not a necessity, and that's what it really comes down in these places as Amersfoort.
So then what is active and sustainable mobility? It's actually made out of two concepts. Active mobility, of course, encouraging physical activity, such as walking and cycling, and then sustainable mobility is more focused on meeting societal access and development needs in a very sustainable and equitable way, in harmony with both human and ecosystem health. An example of this form of active and sustainable mobility would be the STOMP principle, which is based on vulnerability and sustainability of modes of transport, where the most vulnerable and most sustainable modes of transport are prioritized, such as walking, cycling, public transport, and the modes of transport that are less so are then lower ranked, such as shared mobility and private transportation, mostly goes in car usage.
So an exploration of the current case study of Amersfoort. the city itself has a lot of public transportation, but it's mostly in the regional sense. So on paper, it's also what the council members said, they're doing very good, but for inner city mobility, there's still a lot of problems that need to be addressed. So a lot of bus routes go to the central station, or certain hubs, which makes travel between neighborhoods difficult. For example, the case of restaurants. So there's also a lot of competition from cars and bikes because of that, because the bus simply takes longer. People tend to take other modes of transportation. Luckily the government or the local council does want to improve on this. Almost all parties, regardless of their ideology or party or political views, agree on this. And there's a high rating of public transport according to a survey. And this also kind of reflects the SWOT analysis we made. For the good parts, also might be a few problems, or like that local infrastructure is not very good for bus routes, so speed bumps or small roads need to be addressed in the future.
So we conducted a stakeholder analysis according to this chart with power and interest. You can analyze the kind of actors involved in this case very well. For example, with high power and low interest, you have people like Rijkswaterstaat who have a lot of say in what's going to happen, but are not really involved and just say, oh, this is our goal, or we want water safety, but they're not really involved in the specific case. Low power and low interest are, for example, tourists, some people who will use the transport system, or maybe want to park their car sometimes, but are not really involved in the day-to-day workings of the transport system. Then you have high power and high interest. Those are people like the municipality and the province. People are often also involved in the funding process and kind of make the decisions. And then you have low power and high interest, and these are often mainly residents, because they will notice the most effects from the modal shift. So people who have or don't have a car will really notice if we change something about, for example, the amount of parking spaces. Yeah.
Yes, we also, of course, looked at policy analysis. Because we're focusing on connectivity between neighborhoods, we have, of course, looked at policy on more national and regional level. However, that's not very specific to our case study, and therefore we've mostly focused on the environment division of Amersfoort and the environment program of mobility of Amersfoort, which are more local and comprehensible and achievable long-term visions and strategies. The environment division of Amersfoort is more of an integration of sectors. It's very global. It's more ambition focused on the future, and the environment program is then an elaboration on this vision. It's based on three principles: life links, which would be the existing network mobility, inclusivity, so access to the mobility network, and the STOMP principle. We've also looked at the regulatory conditions provided by the land use zoning plans, which are mostly provided by neighborhoods. We've looked at a couple of them, and out of all these zoning plans came the simple constraints and opportunities. Constraints would be no more than 2 lanes. For example, a dedicated bus lane is not possible, as you are only allowed to have 2 lanes per road. And because the zoning plan map is so detailed, there's very little flexibility in where facilities can be developed. However, restructuring roads within their designated spaces is possible, and allowing bicycle stalls is also specifically mentioned as something that is possible.
Yeah, we also have some recommendations for conclusion.
So we also have divided the categories according to the stamp and thought of some things that could be improved.
But this is basically what we've been working towards in our advice, and I think in the interest of time,
We'll leave it at this.
We'll leave it at this. But we've been, I think we're quite, we've made quite some progress in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks for